Hey billionaires, you're tuned in to the AFTERBUZZ TV After Show for Billions Season 2, Episode 9, Sic Transit Imperium. Join me as I break down the episode and give you my thoughts and predictions. Let's go!
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin!
He is risen. Happy Easter, everybody, and welcome to the AFTERBUZZ TV After Show for Billions. Thank you for tuning in tonight. A busy episode tonight on Easter Sunday, and I'm excited to be here to break it down with you. Andrea Fasano is off tonight, so I am your lead host, Frank Maiorana. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Let's Go Frank M. Andrea is off celebrating with her family and her boyfriend, I'm sure. Love you, Andy. Next week, she's going to have to do this all by herself since I'm traveling, so I will steer the ship tonight. What an amazing episode we have to break down, but first I like to start every show with our social media shout-out. So you can use the hashtag ABTVBillions out there online, on Twitter, on Instagram, or by commenting directly on our streaming YouTube page, which some great listeners did last week. First of all, I want to thank Mark Coods, as I like to call him for short, because he's now a friend of the show. Dr. Gus for coming on last week and being gracious enough to being interviewed. We had great positive feedback on that. 17 likes and 0 dislikes, which is kind of a huge deal in our world. So I want to thank everybody for your positive feedback on that. And then as far as listener comments are concerned, Melissa Bischoff wrote a number of comments, so I appreciate that. But the one that I like best with her is, of course, my passion theme for this season, which is Wendy and Chuck. And she says, Wendy and Chuck will get back together, but the X factor will always add spark while Wendy stays employed there. And that's a very good prediction there, Melissa, because we saw in tonight's episode that Wendy is feeling somewhat lost, even though she's come back to Axe Capital, and is confiding in Chuck with her inner feelings on that. And you can see them coming closer together. This is perhaps wishful thinking on my part, because this is something that I want to have happen, because I like the two together, and I like Bobby and Lera when they're together and strong. And so you have two loving couples going at each other. Unfortunately, at this point, it seems like Chuck and Wendy are the ones trending closer together, and Bobby and Lera seem to be trending further apart. But we'll get into that in a minute during the episode breakdown. And then also VLG commented and said, loved the Taylor-Wendy scenes. Those were some of my favorites from last week as well. Just to see the two very good minds, and even Wendy maybe pressed back a little bit into her chair, taken aback by Taylor's intellect, but at the same time, Taylor sees the value that Wendy brings, and is able to look beyond just normal situations and seek some sort of emotional gratification and really dig into Wendy's mind to get some true perspective. So I like that scene a lot too. And we saw Taylor play an important role in tonight's episode, now transferring over to this. So Sic Transit Imperium, which means so passes the empire, which is a very fitting topic, very fitting title for this week's episode, because Bobby Axelrod's Axe Capital is at a crossroads. Is he going to go back to the practices of, questionable morality, questionable legality in his business practices to come out ahead? We had Dollar Bill come back strong this episode. Our boy Kelly Aucoin. It's great to see him back. We got my favorite line, of course, I am not uncertain. We got one of those tonight, which was great. Just to hear that again. I mean, I had to let out a little bit of a cheer when that went out, because yes, oh man, I missed that line so much from last season. And one of these I am not uncertain deals has come along and been offered to Bobby. And just to recap the deal for you guys, there is a Belgian car maker called Klaxon that is certain to fail. their product is, and we actually saw some cutscenes in tonight's episode of their vehicles going off-road, causing crashes, and so a recall is about to happen, and it's going to sink the company. Well, when you know that information, you can short the stock in that company, and as Dollar Bill says in the episode, Axe can come out $100 million ahead. But the problem is, by trading on this type of inside information, it is illegal to do so. If information is not publicly available, and we especially saw the way that Victor passed the information to Bobby tonight, that is opening up a potential vulnerability for Bobby against Chuck Rhoades. And Bobby knows this, right? At the beginning of the episode, we visit with... Well, the beginning of the episode, Wags gives Bobby his birthday gift, but going past that, the second scene, Dollar Bill is at a batting cage with a young baseball player that he's invested in exchange for a chunk of his first contract, and it's paying off big time. And Dollar Bill is pitching this deal that he has probably pitched to Axe dozens of times in past years. But now Bobby's in a position where he's constantly under attack by Rhodes. He's never off the hook, even when he thinks that he is. Because of last week's episode, Axe is reminded that Rhodes Sr., made a play on him. And so Axe is never really free from Rhodes coming after him. And we see Chuck still wants to go after Bobby as much as he possibly can, to the point where Blackjack Foley has to tell Chuck to lay off Axelrod, to lay off Thayer at the end of the episode. And that grinds Chuck, because Chuck's his super objective throughout this whole TV series has been to put Bobby Axelrod behind bars. So to bring it back to my main point, this type of deal can potentially give Rhodes' team an opening to get Bobby Axelrod, to get him in jail, to, make him fall from grace. And that is what Rhodes wants more than anything else. So Axe is aware of this. And when Dollar Bill is pitching this deal to him, Bobby says, look, and I love this scene between Wags and Dollar Bill and Bobby, because, you do have Wags, who is a loyalist and is, telling Dollar Bill off when Dollar Bill starts to challenge Bobby's manhood and willingness to be an outlaw, and has he gone soft? But at the same time, Bobby stays above it all. He stays cool, he stays calm, and explains the situation that he's in. And the reason why he does this specifically with Dollar Bill is because, as we saw from last season, Dollar Bill will never give Bobby up. Never. Dollar Bill would rather send an email to his wife saying that he had a second family than to betray Bobby Axelrod. So the loyalty there is ironclad. And so I think because of that, Bobby will take an extra step. He will be unafraid to explain where he's coming from to Dollar Bill. And normally these billionaires, these guys of high influence, they don't have to explain themselves to anyone except for maybe their wives. But in this case, Bobby takes a more caring touch with Dollar Bill based on what he's done for him before. So, we're seeing Axe evolve in a way. He doesn't really want to get back into this shady dealing because he knows that he's under attack. He knows that this Sandy Cut deal is putting him in a vulnerable position. He has every legal right to seize the assets from the town, sell them, and get his money back. But he's in a vulnerable position. He wants to improve his image. He goes so far as to hire someone to set up a foundation for him and give away his money so that he can clean up his image in the public eye. So it's really interesting because last season we've got an Axelrod who was go, go, go all of the time. And the last few episodes we've seen an Axe starting to return to that. So he fired Stephanie Reed. He is now considering these types of shady deals and gets in bed with Victor, who he fired last season. And now we're starting to get back to the Bobby that we knew from last season. The problem with that is it's going to put him in harm's way with Rhodes. Even though Rhodes is running for governor and Blackjack Foley told him to leave it alone, I don't think you're ever going to see Chuck fully wash his hands of all things Axelrod. That is his mission, and he's never going to let that go. I promise you on that. So, while this whole governor run, gubernatorial run, I should say, is an interesting plot line, there's too much bloodlust there for Chuck, I think, to go after the governor's office all the way. Even though right now, this episode, it looks, I understand, I hear some people commenting right now, he shut down the cases now based on Blackjack Foley's request, and that's true. But I don't know how long that's going to last, especially if Rhodes can see an open and shut case against Axelrod. So a great way to start the episode with that type of dynamic and a growing and changing Bobby Axelrod. And before that, you have Wags give Axe a deposit to a doomsday shelter. And I actually really like this gift. I would love this gift. I'm a bit of a nut myself, and I've got a doomsday bag in my closet with, bandages and ibuprofen and gloves and water soluble or tablets that clean water and, all this stuff. So I somewhat identify with what's going on. I think that's a great gift. And so what Wags gave Bobby are there's these shelters around the country that are built underground, and they're supposed to protect against nuclear war or societal collapse if the financial system were to ever collapse, or if there was a zombie apocalypse, whatever. In theory, you could drive to this compound, and if you had paid a deposit, then you are granted access into this compound. And the VR was kind of cool to start the episode because you see how amazing this underground complex was. It had a pool and guns and places to, play basketball and, sleeping quarters and TVs and the whole thing. But you only really want to go there. You never want to go there, I should say, but you want to have it in case something really, really bad happens. So Wag says, hey, if, the world ever comes to an end, you'll be protected. And really, it's not, it was a $300,000 gift, which is huge. But if that was something that Bobby wanted, he could do it himself. So it wasn't a surprise to me at the end of the episode that Axe would return the deposit gift, because that's just not something that Bobby's planning on. He's moving forward in a world that's going to be here all the way until the time that he dies. So I thought I saw the end coming with the coin return, the birthday gift being returned. But I like the gift. I would appreciate it for myself. And so that resonated with me. Before I move on to the next topic, I want to remind everyone, please subscribe to us on iTunes and YouTube. Give us a thumbs up on our YouTube page, or leave us a review on the iTunes app. You can go to the Billions AfterBuzz TV podcast and leave us a review on there, and we really appreciate all of our listeners. So moving on to our next topic, we had, and I know I briefly touched on this before, but we had Chuck and Wendy coming closer together, and there wasn't a whole lot of scenes between them tonight, but in the main scene that stuck out for me in this episode, you have Wendy opening up and being vulnerable and saying, this just is not working out for me. And they sit together on the bed, or I think it may be a couch right in front of the bed, but there's just a slight space between them. And I think that was symbolic too, that they're sitting on a bed together. They're not touching yet, but they're becoming closer together. And, I'm holding fast to my prediction that by the end of the season, they will be back together and reunited, because there's a softness that both are approaching each other with now. I think they've moved past the hurt of the events of earlier this season and the end of last season, and now they're trying to just come at each other from a place of emotional truth. Now, we cannot forget, in this show, there is never a lie. There is never something that one of these characters is hiding that does not see the light of day. We saw that tonight with Lera learning that Wendy was the one to put the condition on Axe not to see him in any sessions. We knew that was going to be revealed, and I know that Chuck is going to find out that Wendy slept with Craig Hedeker. So that truth is going to come out. So there's that potential hiccup there, that speed bump that could blow up the whole works between Wendy and Chuck, because she had that moment. Last episode, she was talking about being honest, and Chuck fessed up about his date and how he felt he felt that it was adultery, and Wendy did not take the same opportunity to be honest, and in fact hid her rendezvous with my boy Jimmy Wolk, Craig Hedeker. So because of that, I do have some slight concern that my prediction is not going to come true, because we've seen in the show that none of these secrets are held for very long. We always find out the truth. The characters always find out the truth. And speaking of the truth that Lera learned, I mean, how great was Malin Ackerman tonight? I thought she was incredible. I thought we're finally seeing Malin Ackerman the way that she, the powerful actress that she is, because the hurt on her face was so clear without her saying a word. And I've said this many times on this show, the most powerful acting is when the actor does not have to say a word and you know exactly what they're thinking and exactly what they're feeling. And in that moment, I think all of us were there with Lera. You could see the hurt on her face when Wendy told her that, no, it was me who set the policy that I'm not going to see Bobby. I mean, her world was destroyed. And you'll notice she gets in the car and is very short, and Bobby doesn't recognize it. He doesn't say what's wrong. He doesn't notice something is off. He's so totally caught up in his own world and his own optics with his birthday party that he doesn't see that his wife is really hurt. Really hurt. I mean, he lied to her again. So I think some serious damage was done to their relationship tonight. And if events keep tracking along the way that they are right now, you may have a reverse scenario from last season where when you had Wendy leaving Chuck, I think you could potentially see Lera leaving Bobby at the end of this, just because it keeps getting worse between them. Lera says, we're partners in this. Her IV business went upside down, and Bobby, sort of brusquely told her what went wrong, even though he gave her the warning about not having enough time to have the conversation with her the way that she needs him to. He brusquely delivered that news to her. He lied to her about Wendy Rhodes coming back, and now he lied to her about the policy that him and Wendy had regarding his sessions. So there's a lot that Lera is not being included in right now. Because of that, there's a distance that naturally develops between a couple when you keep things from one another. And I think as soon as next episode, we are going to see Lera confront Bobby about it. I mean, this is episode 9. Next week is episode 10. After that, we've got 2 episodes left. I mean, we are very close to the end of season 2 of Billions, and thank goodness there's a season 3. But there's a lot to wrap up before this season is over. You have Lera and Bobby's relationship problems. You have Chuck and Wendy potentially working it out, depending on what happens with the Hedeker information. And you also have the big-time Sandy Cot deal that needs to be cleaned up. Rhodes figures everything out this episode. Is a bit of a tongue twister for me. He figures everything out this episode. He goes to Thayer and says, I know what happened. Here's my scenario. And, I can help you. He's basically trying to turn Thayer. And Thayer is played by Richie Koster, which is one of my favorite featured actors. He's so good. He's been in American Gangster. He was in The Dark Knight and Creed. He's such a good actor. And Richie Koster is the kind of guy you see in so many movies, and he's so good. You're like, oh yeah, that guy from the movie. And he's just so great every time. He has such an ease about him. I love that scene between him and Chuck. They're standing on top of a mound of dirt. looking at the construction site that is being built. And, Richie just, he has all the leverage. And even when Chuck Rhoades confronts him with the truth about what happened on the Sandicott casino deal, you don't see him flinch. You see Thayer just kind of relaxed and saying, come at me, bro. Like, go ahead. I'm not afraid. I've got all that I need. I'm relaxed. And at the end of that scene, he says, all right, I'll see you at my arraignment. As if he's daring Chuck to charge him, because he's so confident that he's covered his tracks, that nothing can be truly brought back to him. And we see later in the episode why he is so confident, because Chuck then goes and meets with Blackjack Foley, and Foley is tied in to this casino deal. So Foley says, why don't we drop that Thayer Axelrod case? And, Rhodes' ambition to be governor, which I believe is somewhat temporary, and we'll get to that in predictions in a moment. But, at the end of the day, Foley says, you need to quash this. And so there's just so much of this establishment deal-making, backroom, smoke-filled room deals in this episode. And it's actually very pertinent to our times with, very anti-establishment, populist furor out there in our country and in the world. So this all makes a lot of sense, and it's kind of infuriating to watch. Chuck has figured out what happened on the Sandicott deal, and he can't do anything because of political reasons. Something that Connerty said when Chuck calls him in and tells him the truth, said, we're going to drop this thing again against Axe. And Connerty says, political reasons. And Chuck doesn't deny it. I appreciated his up forwardness and just saying, yes, that's why. And Connerty kind of shakes his head and says, okay, and gets out. And, you can see just how frustrating that can be. That you don't do the right thing, that you have somebody caught doing something wrong, but your boss doesn't want to do anything about it because, the boss is running for governor. It can be an incredibly frustrating experience, and I think we're all right there with Connerty when that happens. But I think what's ultimately going to derail Chuck is he's going back on his public vow to open up his blind trust fund so that his dad can use some money to get the Ice Juice IPO set up. And it's just amazing to me how much power Chuck Rhoades Sr. has over his son. It's evolved over the seasons, now to the point where Chuck is going against one of his public promises, which I guess is a fairly common occurrence for politicians, but still, we had faith that Chuck was not going to do that he was going to be someone who is a different kind of politician. He goes to Sandicott to say, he's going to make sure that the law is enforced in Sandicott, and he's not going to let Axe do anything illegal, which really accomplishes nothing. Another great, a political point scored by Rhodes. He does a whole lot of talking and a whole lot of nothing beside that. The point being here that, Chuck is so influenced by his dad. And despite Chuck saying publicly, I'm putting my funds into a blind trust, I can't use it, he's going to go against that so he can help out his dad and his friend. That's going to get out. I mean, as I said before, no secrets stay safe on this show, and that's going to get out as well. So I'd like to move into my final segment of the show tonight, which is predictions, because I've already led into a few of those tonight, but my predictions for next week and the rest of the season to come.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
So I'm going to predict that Rhodes' gubernatorial bid will be derailed, both through his public promises to keep his blind trust secure now being revoked, and Rhodes' ultimate ambition to get Axe. I mean, those two things combined will be the way that I think Rhodes is going to drop out of the gubernatorial race, or he'll be forced out. Rhodes doesn't do well under the command of people. That's not his style. He wants to be his own man. And I know right now he's on good terms with his dad, but we've seen before, Rhodes Sr. does what he wants to do. There's a lot of machismo coming from Rhodes Sr., and he may do something that goes past the line of acceptability for Rhodes Jr. So I don't think this gubernatorial bid is going to go past this season. And I know before, I sort of saw a path for this show that ended with, well, not ended, but continued with Chuck being in the governor's office. I don't see that happening anymore. David Strathairn has been great this season on Billions. The guy's a movie star, though. I don't know how long you can keep him on this show. And to me, he's someone who plays a guest star role through the end of the season, and we don't see him for season 3. But so far, it's been great to watch. Just to see Chuck sort of chewing on these political ambitions and what he wants out of that, but at the same time, his old mission isn't done. He hasn't got Axe yet, and that's what he ultimately wants out of this whole entire situation. His wife by his side, his wife out of Axe Capital, and Bobby Axelrod behind bars. So that's my prediction for next week. Andrea will be filling in for me next week as I'm traveling internationally. So thank you all so much for tuning in this week. It's been such a pleasure to talk with all of you about tonight's episode. Be sure to comment on our YouTube page, or you can reach out on Twitter directly. My Instagram and Twitter handle is @Let'sGoFrankM. So until then, till next week, well, I'll see you 2 weeks from now. Go out, be blessed. I'll see you back soon.
Executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.